What's up guys, and welcome to a brief video on the mechanics of the guilds of Ravnica Allegiance. I thought I'd take a little bit of time and actually go through, give a brief explanation of every mechanic that we are seeing in this new set. We're also going to talk about the flavor and how it actually matches up with the guild, and then of course the playability of it in the limited environment is really what we're going to be focusing on. If you do have any questions or if you have any more information, feel free to leave those in the comment section below. But without further ado, let's jump right into it. Let's jump right in with Azorius, and the new mechanic we're seeing featured here is Addendum. As a brief explanation, Addendum provides a give and take relationship, so by giving up a little bit of flexibility, you can receive extra abilities on your spells. Spells with Addendum provide a bit of a bonus for playing them specifically during your main phase. So as an example, we'll look at Sphinx's Insight, which is 2, a blue, and a white for an instant. It allows you to draw 2 cards, but if you've played it during your main phase, you can also gain 2 life. Obviously, this is a really awesome mechanic. It gives you a bonus for playing things during your main phase, which I think, depending on the matchup, is going to be really relevant. In terms of fitting the guild for flavor, this mechanic is the one that I'm least sold on. While I sort of understand how it plays into the right place, right time aspect of the Azorius guild, it doesn't feel quite as fitting as some of the past mechanics like Detain from the previous Ravnica sets. The Azorius are the Lawbringers on Ravnica, so I would like to have seen something a little more focused on that, but I'm still not unhappy with Addendum by any means. As far as playability goes, Addendum seems like it will be much stronger in Constructed, but I think it does have its place in Limited as well. The most exciting part of this mechanic is flexibility in my opinion. Being able to tailor when you play your spells based on your opponent's gameplay seems super helpful. As an example, Sphinx's Insight would be great to play main phase during aggressive decks, as the life gain will help you buffer and may help you save a full turn if played correctly. Against another Azorius deck, the life gain probably won't matter quite as much, but leaving up mana might. In this case, playing it at instant speed may end up being the way to go, so you can represent a counter or an instant speed threat of some kind. Overall, I think Addendum is really cool. It gives you some flexibility, which I think is always important no matter what you're playing, and so I really do like it. I'm interested to see how this plays out. Again, I really think in Constructed, it's really at its best, but I do think in Limited, you'll be able to tailor your matchup and probably make it worthwhile. The second mechanic that we are going to look at is Riot, and this is for the Gruul clan. A little explanation for Riot: it's an enter the battlefield ability that allows you to decide if you want to give a creature haste or a +1/+1 counter. Important thing to note, some instances may give a single creature 2 Riot triggers. In this case, each is chosen individually, so you may give a creature haste and a counter if you'd like, or any combination of those 2 effects. As an example, we're going to look at Gruul Spellbreaker. It's a 3/3 for 1, a red and a green, and with Riot you can decide if you want it to be a 3/3 haste creature or a 4/4 creature instead as it comes into play. As far as flavor is concerned, I definitely think this plays super well into the Gruul clan. It gives either a speed boost or a size boost depending on the situation, which is great. I think this makes cards a little bit more flexible as well, which is awesome. It allows you to either swing super quickly or be really aggressive kind of in that mid game, which I like a lot. In terms of playability, this seems like a great aggro mechanic for sure, which again is perfect for the Gruul clan. What I like about being able to choose between speed or power is that it also gives you some plays in the mid game as well by playing giant creatures. If you're in a commanding position, I think most often you will choose to give it haste, as you'll want to close the game as quickly as possible. If you're in a stall, it could really depend on the board state, but playing larger creatures may help you dig out of a sticky situation. Seeing as this affects the board in such a large way, I think it'll be one of the best ways to win quickly in Limited. Overall, I really like Riot. I think it's super fantastic. It's going to be a really powerful mechanic, especially in Limited. I think that's clearly where it's going to be at its best, and any aggro player is going to love this mechanic. Next, we have the Orzhov, and the mechanic that is being featured here is Afterlife. As a brief explanation, Afterlife triggers when a creature dies, and it leaves a certain number of 1/1 white and black spirit creature tokens behind with flying. For example, we do have Ministrant of Obligation. It's a 2/1 creature for 2 and a white, and it has Afterlife 2, so when this dies, it's going to leave 2 of those tokens behind. A lot of the creatures that we're seeing in this set have Afterlife 1, so they're probably just going to be replacing themselves most of the time, but overall I think it's a really cool mechanic. Afterlife essentially adds extra value to the Orzhov creatures by allowing them to leave behind their spirit, which plays super well into the flavor of the Orzhov guild itself. They're driven by the belief that their spirit may continue to serve the Syndicate even after the afterlife, and so this mechanic just seems perfect for that. As far as playability is concerned, I think it's a great passive ability for the Orzhov guild. Adding value like this to creatures means that point and click removal is much less effective than it normally would be. This also enables go-wide strategies much easier, as even after the first creature is destroyed, one or even multiple creatures will take its place. Taking a look at some of the other cards in the Orzhov guild, this clearly seems to be the intent behind the set. Overall, I really like the Afterlife mechanic. I love passive abilities, and being able to just leave behind creatures anytime a creature dies is fantastic. Moving on to the Rakdos guild, we have Spectacle, which is a really interesting mechanic. It provides a card with an alternative casting cost, so as long as the opponent has lost life this turn, you can actually play the cards for their Spectacle cost instead of playing them for their normal mana cost. Now in some cases this is more, some cases it's less, and in some cases the abilities actually change. For example, we have the Rixmati Reveler, which is a 2/2 for 1 and a red. When it enters the battlefield, you discard a card and then you draw a card, but if Spectacle cost was paid, instead you're going to discard your entire hand, draw 3 cards, and then that Spectacle cost is actually 2, a black and a red. In this instance, the Spectacle cost is obviously more and takes the original effect of the card and boosts it to a much higher level. Instead of rummaging for just 1 card, you instead discard your entire hand and draw 3 cards, making it more of a quote-unquote spectacle. Another example I wanted to talk about really quick is Drill Bit. For 2 and a black, it's a sorcery. Target player reveals their hand, you choose a non-land card from it, and that player discards the card. You can also play this for the Spectacle cost, which is only 1 black, and the same ability happens, so in this case, it's actually just an efficiency boost, it's not an actual replacement effect. In terms of flavor, I love this for the Rakdos guild. It's all about making a spectacle, making a grand entrance, doing crazy off-the-wall things, and that is exactly what the Rakdos guild actually does anyway. Spectacle just plays into that super well. Getting high-powered and efficient effects at the price of requiring damage to the opponent also incentivizes aggro decks, which is already kind of the idea behind the Rakdos guild. I think what's really nice about this mechanic is that it also gives the Rakdos deck a little bit more mid to late game playability. In terms of playability, this definitely adds some late game effects that could keep the Rakdos decks moving forward instead of burning out so quickly. Importantly, I also think Spectacle allows for some efficient plays when done correctly, which helps Rakdos decks reach that multiple spells per turn threshold much quicker. This is an important step to get to for aggro decks, as they want to get the opponent as far down as possible as early as possible. Being able to play something like Drill Bit post-combat for 1 black and then following it up with a cheap creature allows you to apply pressure and keep the opponent off of key cards that can help them dig out of a quick game. Overall, Spectacle seems like a solid mechanic to represent the Rakdos guild in terms of flavor and playability. Fundamentally, it suits the guild extremely well and provides a new dynamic to Rakdos builds that I'm excited to see in the new limited environment. Again, playing off the aggro principles and giving a bonus for dealing damage just seems like a win-win all around. Last but not least, we have the Simic guild, and the new mechanic being featured here is Adapt. Adapt allows a buff to creatures that do not have any +1/+1 counters already placed on them for a certain mana cost. For example, we have Zagana, Utopian Speaker. It's a 4/4 creature for 2 a green and a blue. It also features Adapt 4 for 4 a green and a blue, and if this creature has no +1/+1 counters on it, you place 4 of them on it instead. Obviously, you can have different numbers of adapts, so that's going to vary from card to card. It's not always just going to be 4. The idea here is that the Simic guild is constantly adapting and improving themselves. +1/+1 counters have always been a fairly common mechanic featured with Simic, but I really like the flavor of the Adapt mechanic. Allowing you, the player, to choose when you want to quote-unquote adapt your creatures forces you to play a part of the Simic scientist and make decisions that favor your gameplay. In terms of playability, there are things I like and things I don't like with this particular mechanic. It adds a natural mana sink to a lot of creatures in limited, which is always welcome. Having a place to throw extra mana late game keeps up momentum no matter what cards you actually draw. There's also a lot of support for counters in the Simic guild in general, which I like as it incentivizes adapting creatures as early as possible. The downside, in my opinion, is that it is an activated ability that you have to spend extra mana on, and it's only a one-time use. It's definitely powerful and affects the board, so I think it will do fairly well in limited. However, if the creatures are removed before you can activate the ability, you lose out on a lot of potential power. Also, if the creature is removed after the ability, it makes it way worse. Overall, I'm not 100% sold on the Adapt mechanic. I do think it will be quite good, but I don't know if it holds a candle to the other mechanics that we've already seen. Thank you so much for watching this mechanics overview video. I hope you found it helpful. Again, if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to leave down below, please make sure to do so. And of course, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel if you really enjoyed it. I'll see you guys in the next video.